Love your city, every back road, every alley, every pothole. Love your city, every back road. Come together, fight for your home.
Welcome to the Love Your City podcast. My name is Bob Dalton. In each episode, I interview people doing grassroots work in their communities. This episode, I have the privilege to interview Darrie Ganzhorn, the Executive Director of the Homeless Garden Project, a nonprofit organization providing job training, transitional employment, and support services to individuals in Santa Cruz who are experiencing homelessness. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for your interest in our work and for being here. It's really good to see you.
Yeah, this is my second time, and it's always such a pleasure to come out here and see the work in the garden. Just everything. I love it out here so much, and I wish I'd come out here more. And last time I came out here was about 2 years ago, right when COVID hit. And yeah, just really grateful for the work you're doing. Excited to dive into just everything you're doing.
Well, you're always welcome here. We love your visits, and we also really love telling the community in the widest sense about the work that we do.
Yeah, it's really unique. So I'm excited to dive in. The first thing I want to start off, though, is something that you said before and that I found really interesting that I wanted to just kick it off with is you say something that we often ask here in the garden is how much is enough? Can you break that down?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, isn't it? Especially as we look around the world right now at the incredible inequality and think about how that relates to homelessness. And it's a really different way of looking at the world than a lot of our culture. And I recently picked up Wendell Berry's book, The Art of Loading Brush, and he talks in there about agrarian values, and that's definitely a part of it, along with really thinking about not wasting, kind of use what you have well, care for what you have, value and hold precious all that you have and tend to it rather than trying to accumulate more. And I think that it's really useful to say how much is enough. And I'll just say that I came across a list recently, I can't remember where, but it was talking about ways to address climate change. And it was saying one thing is to only commit to buying 3 pieces of clothing a year. And I realized, I'm done for the year. I thought that was really interesting, when you start really quantifying and thinking about how much is enough and where it can take you.
And how does that apply to the garden? Why has that become a philosophy or something that you often ask in the garden? Is this enough?
Well, interesting, because I might be kind of rethinking some of what I might have been thinking when we last spoke. I've been really thinking about, we have a 1-year program. We started out with a 3-year program, and we wanted to serve more people, number one. Number two was we changed our goal from people simply achieving well-being, however they defined it, to having a goal that people would get into jobs and housing. And we were also finding that for people to stay for 3 years rather than 2 years or 1 year, what was happening was rather than people being more prepared to enter the workforce, they were actually less willing to leave the farm. They were less willing to. They felt a really strong sense of ownership and felt, the uniqueness of the environment that we're creating out there. And they just wanted to stay. It didn't help people to build confidence to move out into the world. So we went from 3 years to 2 years to 1 year. So that's a question, how long of a program is enough? But I've been really thinking a lot lately about the path of change that we all take, and resilience and relapse. And, what's the role that we can play for people who were really successful in the program, but then ran into a bump, and are struggling again? Does it make sense for them to come back? So that's one thing. And then, we're doing CSA shares right now and running into production problems. We're short-staffed. We have some pests out of the farm. And we have CSA members who have paid for a share of produce every week. And, how do we share the risk of the farm with them? Like, where's the limit on that? Do we we lost 2 crops out of 11 that should have been in their basket. Do we ask them just to forget those 2 crops or do we try to source something from another farm? That's one of the questions. We're also really looking at how we can have the most impact in the community and how right now we're serving 22 trainees, but we know that the number of people experiencing homelessness in Santa Cruz is over 2,000. And so how much impact is enough? And are there ways that we could be serving people less intensively, but having an impact in their life, maybe bringing them to a place where they would be more ready to be a trainee? Those are some that come to mind. I don't remember what we were talking about before. I feel like it might have been more interesting.
No, I remember it just stood out to me. And you said, how much is enough? And it was just a question that really stuck with me since the last time we talked. And I knew that, I don't know, was integrated into a lot of your work and how it's reflected today. But give us an overview, like a bird's eye view of the Homeless Garden Project.
Okay. So the project started in 1990 and has really evolved over the years. Currently, we have 2 main programs that take place on our organic farm and in 2 main enterprises. Programs are a transitional employment, job training, and support services program for people experiencing homelessness, and then a community education and volunteer program for the broader community. And that takes place within our 2 main enterprises are the farm enterprises and what we call the value-added enterprise. The farm enterprises, there's 3 different ways that we sell the produce that we grow in our training program. The main way is through a community-supported agriculture program, and that's where members of the community purchase a share of the harvest for the whole season. In our case, that's 23 weeks from the middle of May to the end of October. And they can either purchase the share where we harvest it, and then they just come pick up the already harvested share, or they can be a U-Pick member where they come each week and harvest the share themselves. This is a really nice way. It helps with crop planning. It really creates this wonderful community of people who are investing in our work and in our farm, and a neighborhood of eaters, and so that's the CSA. We also have a version of CSA called Feed 2 Birds, and that is a program where community members partner with us and help us to buy a portion of our shares. This year it's 45 shares. And then we distribute them to agencies that are working with people who might not have access to healthy, fresh, organic produce. Those agencies come and pick up 3 shares and distribute them to the people they're working with. It's pretty inspiring because really when you break that down, what's happening is our trainees who may have been in a position of receiving a lot of help, asking for a lot of help, are really what they're doing is helping to feed people in our community who don't have access to healthy organic produce. And the community is helping in this win-win-win solution, where it's a healthy organic solution to growing produce. It's helping people to get back into work and housing and helping to get food to people who need it. So that's the CSA. We also have a few wholesale accounts, and we also have a farm stand where people from the community who want to come and harvest their own produce can harvest without the commitment of a CSA. They can, we were thinking about the difference between dating and marriage kind of, so they can come to the farm stand. We'll have a menu of whatever is available for harvest, and somebody from the staff will help them harvest if they've never harvested before. A lot of people come and harvest strawberries and make a flower bouquet. Some people come and do greens and tomatoes and lots of the veggies. So that's the farm enterprises. The farm enterprises are bringing in 3 to 5% of our income, but they are providing the basis for our training program. The farm is an incredibly tangible way for people to see the impact of their work. It's an incredible place to bring people together as well.
And farm enterprises being the share programs?
Shares, wholesale accounts, and farm stand. And honestly, since COVID, we've been really focusing on the CSA.
How big is a share?
A share feeds about 4 people.
Okay.
And it usually has 11 or so items. And, there's kind of like a little curve. We start out small in the spring. And the idea is that we taper off in the fall, but we actually really get going in the fall. And we'll have all the peppers and the squashes, and we have the most beautiful tomatoes. The flowers will be really going in the fall time too. We even have what we call a fall extension. So there are a smaller group of people who come every week for 4 weeks during the month of November to get their share. And then we also have what we call a value added add-on, where CSA members can get one of the value added products that our trainees make, which leads me to talking about the value added enterprise. And that was started as a way to provide work for our trainees during the rainy season. We, at the very beginning, were laying people off during the winter so that they wouldn't have to be working on the farm in the rain. And they didn't want to be laid off and came to the staff and said, what about if we make wreaths, and brought these beautiful wreaths they had made with products from the farm. And what about if we make hand-dipped beeswax candles? And so we started out very slowly, probably a little bit like sackcloth and ashes. We used to have our office in a garage, and we had volunteers who would come and pick up wreaths and candles and take them to churches. And then on Monday morning, we would see what sold. And it would be so exciting to see, people in the community really valuing these creations. So we got pretty serious about it. And one year, somebody said, why don't we try and get a store downtown for the holidays? And that took off, and it just kept taking off. So we now have a year-round store. We have a few product lines, and we make over 40 products. We have the food and pantry items, which includes teas and herbs and baking mixes, jam. We make strawberry syrup and so on. And then we have a bath and body line. And the candle products, we've branched out from just hand-dipped beeswax candles. We also make soy candles, which have scents in them. And then a lot of dried flower arrangements. And the trainees are learning a whole new set of skills. They're working in a really different environment during the workshop period. Rather than being out on a 3.5 acre farm, we're here in this tiny workshop space and working, kind of more intimately and using more fine motor stuff. And that project brings in around 25% of our income. It's a little bit more than that.
So bird's eye view is that you bring in trainees, and these are people who have gone or are going through some sort of a particular situation in their life where they're either homeless or they're looking for a fresh start. Or how do you define who a trainee is, and how do they actually get accepted? Is there certain qualifications for them to enter into the program?
Yeah. So right now we do an orientation with somebody who's interested and sort of explain to them what the program is. A lot of people think our program works a certain way, and we have to really clarify how it does work. And then if they're interested, we need to complete some paperwork. So we need basic ID from people. We're also requiring people to have a vaccine. During the rainy season, we work very closely together. And last year, everyone who worked with us had to get a vaccine. So out of respect for them, we're continuing that. We look for people who want to use the program to get into a job in housing. Not everyone wants that, and that's fine with us, but that is what our program focuses. So that's what we're looking for. And then we're looking for people who have that goal, who may have encountered barriers to that goal. And then we're also looking for people who want to make a positive contribution to the community at the farm. And that is because we really see the importance of the community to people's success. And it isn't just that our trainees succeed because others are respectful and cooperative to them. It's because being respectful and cooperative is, a source of well-being and a source of self-esteem and self-confidence. So we tell trainees, people who are applying to become a trainee, we say that making a positive contribution to the community, that it shows up with attendance, really being present, being on time, and the project can't have an impact if you're not here. And also really investing in your own success and understanding that it's themselves that will help them to succeed. We do an interview after someone has completed what we call a trial hire. They work with us for 2 weeks. It's paid time, 20 hours each week, and we pay minimum wage, which is, at this recording, it's $15 an hour. And we ask things like, how will things be different for you in a year if you're in this program? And what does it mean to you to be accountable? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are you to make change? So those are some of the things we ask.
What are some of those average answers that you get? What are some of the answers that stick out consistently to you?
Yeah.
What they see in a year from now? What do they want?
Yeah. A lot of people are really excited about the learning. After if they've spent 2 weeks with us, they're really excited about learning more about the farm. Many, many people right now, what they really want at the end of a year is to have housing and stability. Many people want, do say, I want a job. The answers are really unique, and no one answer is coming to me right now, but they are really from the heart. In terms of the question of how ready are you on a scale of 1 to 10 to make change, a lot of people say 15, which is both really inspiring and a little heartbreaking. And then some people are very serious and accurate about that answer, like, I think I'm only really at an 8, but I think, maybe I'll get to a 9 while I'm here, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And some of the most amazing answers about what does accountability mean. I think there is one answer that I really remember from that is somebody said, being accountable means never knowingly leave somebody wondering what you're going to do. I thought that was really beautiful.
So 22 trainees now in the program, working 5 days a week?
4 days a week.
4 days a week. And walk us through an average. Oh, and one question before that is, how many trainees versus staff?
Right. So we have 2 training staff. We have a program manager and a training supervisor. The program manager also works with the social work program. We have a crop production manager and a farm manager. And then we also have staff for the value-added enterprise, and we also have staff for the store. We have administrative staff. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was kind of just wondering the ratio of staff versus...
So it's...
But you have 2 trainers for all the 22 trainees that are kind of with them along the journey out, teaching them how to garden, and they're walking the year-long program with them.
Let's back up and talk about the seasonality of the program. So we hope to be out in the farm full-time, which would be the 20 hours a week, beginning in March. And then if it's a really rainy spring, we might not be quite there yet. And then we work on the farm March through October. In October, we work 2 days a week on the farm, 2 days a week in the workshop. Then in November and December, we work 4 days a week in the workshop. There is a small skeleton crew that stays up at the farm and does the winter farm maintenance. And then we take a break and come back in January. And we're sort of moving between the farm, the workshop, and what we call the job series. And that actually takes place mostly at the workshop, but it is 16 weeks or so of classes that might be half the day or might be the full 5-hour day that are about, understanding who you are, what your strengths are in the workplace, what excites you about working, what positions would be really meaningful and give somebody a sense of purpose. What have you achieved in your work life? Whether it's volunteering or as a parent or as a hobby, what have you achieved and how do you talk about that? And then how do you translate that into a resume? We have employers, local employers come in and do a panel, and we have information about how to do an interview. And then we have local employers come in to talk about how to do an interview, and we do mock interviews. And we have had people get a job from these mock interviews, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's about 16 weeks, and then we're back at the farm again.
Yeah.
So the question was,
you had two trainers for all 22 trainees through the program.
Yeah. So Francesca and Evan are with them. Francesca every day, every time they're there. Evan is working with people more closely in terms of helping them to get into housing, get into appointments, resolve issues they're struggling with. We have our farm staff who helps with the farm supervision. And then when we come down here to the workshop, we have our workshop staff who helps with the production. So there's sort of like the production end of it and the training, and that's about work skills.
Yeah.
I'm saying this as though you could see them as different, but they merge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what I love about this particular model is, and I've shared this with you before, but I learned there's 8 levels of charity in the Jewish religion. And the lowest form of charity is giving grudgingly. And the highest form of charity is providing opportunity for someone to provide for themselves. And of all the programs and the solutions and the things that I get to come across as I'm kind of learning about all of the amazing work going on, few programs are providing opportunity for people to provide for themselves. A lot of programs or solutions a lot of them are focused on response and responding to a particular problem. Whereas the Homeless Garden Project is bringing people in, training them, giving them some beautiful experiences in their journey over that year-long program, and helping them set up for whatever's next in their lives. And there's like a space for them to really figure out who they are, what they want to do, have some vision, and also be trained in some really practical job training ways and skills-based ways that could potentially help set them up for success in their next season.
Yeah, the project is really a brilliant model. Paul Lee, who had the vision for this project, is a pretty brilliant visioning type of person. He loved gardens. He was very involved in starting the farm and garden up at the university. He was also very involved with starting the first homeless shelter in our community, and had always sort of held this vision of creating a place where people could feel safe and be surrounded by beauty and dream of something better. And then he is very good at recruiting people to his cause. And he recruited Lynn Basehor, who is now Lynn Cooper. And she was really interested in compost and a really good manager and really good at drawing from the people who were originally out at the farm. What do you want from this project? What do you want from this experience? And really shaping the project towards them. And then we've just had the benefit of having such awesome partners through the years to help us shape and evolve the program.
And when did Paul Lee found Homeless Garden Project?
That was May of 1990.
Okay. Amazing. And how long? Oh, I guess when did you come on?
I came during that first year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So you've been here from the beginning?
Not really. I mean, a lot had already gotten started when I got here. And I was...
In that first year?
Yeah. I mean, there was this beautiful farm. There was a very strong, thriving community. There was a really strong value or vibe of self-sufficiency. And I was doing an internship at the Resource Center for Nonviolence, and I had been really inspired by Miles Horton, who wrote this book called Unearthing Seeds of Fire. And he talked about how if you want to make an impact on a social issue and you yourself are not experiencing that problem, the most effective thing you can do is to bring people together and help them find their own solutions. And I heard about the Homeless Garden Project and I was like, wow, that's exactly it. So I came and I saw this beautiful community and I thought, really, what can I do? I mean, it's so whole and beautiful, but I thought I could help more people know about what was happening. So I had the incredible honor of doing a newsletter that was distributed locally. And it was kind of like a little newspaper. And I went to Circle Meeting, which is what you went to today. And I was pretty sure that I was going to say that I was writing this newsletter and everybody was going to want to be involved. And I was going to have to, they were going to like pound the door down. And there was one person who wanted to write a newsletter. And he wrote the most beautiful piece called A Day in the Life of the Homeless Garden Project. He was a Vietnam War vet who had been homeless many, many years and was really recreating his life at the project, and an incredible writer, just incredible. And then I was able to interview all the other people in the crew and use their voice in the newsletter as well.
On the note of A Day in the Life of the Homeless Garden Project, can you walk us through what a normal average day is on the farm?
Yes. First of all, I'll say there is no such thing, but we'll pretend. So Tuesday and Friday are harvest days. And so let's talk about a Tuesday. So Tuesday, the farm staff and our operations director and our training supervisor, they get to the farm at 8:30 and they sort of gather and get clear on the plan for the day. They do that on Monday as well. You know, we have our operations meeting for the whole week, but there's always last minute adjustments based on weather or who's coming, or so they get together. We do circle meeting, and Francesca, our training supervisor, poses a question. Today, the question was, when do you feel most creative? And everybody goes around and introduces, says their name and answers the question. If they want to talk about what's going on with them, they have an opportunity to do that.
And that's circle.
That's circle.
And real quick, what was your answer?
My answer was, I really need to be around people to be creative, but then I am most creative when I have some solitude. And then we go to the chalkboard, and Mike, our crop production manager, has written what the harvest is, specifically, maybe there's 11 vegetables, but then how many heads of bok choy do we need? And who's going to go out and get it, and where on the farm are those beds?
And these are things to make up for, put together for the shares?
Correct. Yeah. So, if we have 45 shares that we're harvesting for, maybe whoever's harvesting the bok choy is going to cut it correctly, which is a good thing to know. And they're going to harvest 45 heads of bok choy. There's usually a flower group, so they'll do 45 bouquets. First, they go out and harvest buckets of flowers, and then they make the bouquets. It's a really beautiful sight. It's a very soothing sight to see them doing that. And sometimes harvest will extend past lunchtime, and sometimes we'll be able to do it all before lunch. There's a group of people who are taking all the abundance and weighing it and recording it and breaking it into the actual shares and washing it and all of that. Then there's lunch. Today there was a couple trainees who helped make lunch. We usually have a volunteer who cooks lunch. We try to have sort of like, I'm the Tuesday lunch volunteer, I'm the Wednesday one. And then we all eat together, and then we have a circle after.
Hold on.
Yeah. Yes.
All of the lunches are made from the garden.
Yes.
And it's incredible food. What did we eat today?
Today we had a really beautiful salad.
It was so good.
Wasn't it good? There was avocado, which was not from the garden. That was a nice touch. And some brown rice and some really beautiful squashes, summer squashes. I didn't get any of those. What did you think?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gourmet.
Did they have herbs on them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were so good. And yeah, so every meal, every lunch at the farm is from the farm?
As much as possible, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so second circle.
So second circle is sort of, like if trainees, so some days we have a lot of volunteers out at the farm. We might have a group from a local company, as many as 20 people. And sometimes they share lunch with us, and sometimes they just bring their own lunch and we eat together. But whoever's been working in the morning comes to that circle and we talk about what the tasks were and what still needs to be finished up. And if everything is finished, which it normally isn't, what are people going to go do for the rest of the day? So that should be usually at 12:30 and the shift ends at 2. And we put our tools away, trainees sign out. Our farm staff continues working on the farm, and sometimes there are extra hours available for trainees who want to work more than 20 hours a week. And sometimes there are extra hours down here in the workshop for trainees to do some production for the store. And then lately, our training staff has been working with people who are interested in joining the program, telling them how the program works, helping them to get ready with their ID and so forth.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have ID.
Yeah, and that's a tough thing to get when you don't have it and you're kind of at a loss of what the steps are. It's difficult already going into a DMV or something.
We have a great service in Santa Cruz called Wings, and that's one of the things they do is they help people get their ID, and including birth certificates, and they're expert. And that is one of the things that our program manager does is really he knows what's going on with all these other local agencies and how to get something done quickly and in the straightest line.
Yeah. Coming back to the technicalities of your ecosystem.
Yes.
Trainees working in the garden and all of the food that's harvested and produced gets distributed amongst shares that get distributed to people that sign up to actually buy shares, right? People in the community that want to support the garden and eat from the garden, they can actually sign up consistently and come pick up their shares. And then food also gets distributed to organizations that are serving people that are in need of food. Talk a little bit about the programs that you guys are in partnership with and kind of how that food's distributed.
Yeah, so this year we're working with 15 different agencies. Last year we worked with 10. And so this year there's HUD, the Veterans Administration Supportive Housing Program. We work with Homeless Persons Health Project. We work with Nueva Vista, serving people in the Beach Flats community.
And are these shelters or food pantries or what are they typically?
So they're really diverse.
Okay.
And the way that they connect with their participants is also really diverse. And so they have identified those shares with very specific people who are going to get it every week, which is lovely, isn't it? Then some of them, we're working with a few schools this year, and I'm not quite sure how they actually distribute the food to their students, but they work with a much broader population, many more people. And so maybe they give it, 1 week to this family, 1 week to that family. We just had a volunteer who, she spent the whole year with us last year, every harvest day, and started making recipes with using the produce that we had harvested. And then she made a little cookbook about it. And so she got the cookbook published, and we sell it in our store, our online store in downtown. And then she also gave us cookbooks to give to each of the agencies. So we've been giving those out so that people who are getting this food have a way to use it. And she said that the cookbook was a way to inspire seasoned chefs, but also give basic instructions to new chefs.
So things that are produced in the garden go to shares that get distributed to people who sign up, go to people that are in need of food through organizations that you're partnered with, and get a lot of things in the garden get brought into the workshop and created in a lot of different ways through talk a little bit about the things that I got to see all of the different things that you sell in your shop here in Santa Cruz. Talk about how it goes from things that are harvested in the garden to all of the amazing products that you now sell in the shop.
Okay.
And kind of through the workshop.
Yeah. So we went to the greenhouse today. So when you see a wreath in the store, you can think of that wreath starting as a seed in the greenhouse. Maybe it was a straw flower, or maybe it was love in a mist, or I think we grow, more than 50 varieties of flowers. So that flower gets planted in the ground and tended. And when it starts, as a seedling, then eventually it creates flowers, and somebody will harvest a bundle of those flowers, hang them upside down, and dry them in the drying shed that you saw today.
Mm-hmm.
When they get dry, they get removed from the drying shed and put in bags that you can see over there on that shelf. And they're all really labeled with, what type of flower it is and what year and what month. And we'll just keep accumulating those bags all through the year until October, when the trainees start to make backings for the wreaths. And then someone will come and do a class on how to make a wreath. And it's I find it to be a very beautiful but kind of fussy process. And some trainees just make the most beautiful wreaths. But everyone develops like a sense of color and a sense of design.
But there's a lot of other things too, like tea.
Yes. So right behind you right now, I see our lavender shortbread cookie mix, our biscuit mix, some of our herb mixes, our teas. So I don't know if you saw the herbs, but there's sort of an area where we're growing all the herbs, and those are harvested and then dried on racks up at the farm. And some of them you have to remove the herb from the stem, so that kind of processing can be a bit time consuming. And then we have kind of recipes. We have a whole book of recipes for all these products. And then we have our value added enterprise manager who buys, all of the ingredients that we need to make the tea, for example. Like, it's packaged in a little tin and it has a label on it. And so she'll make sure all those things are done. The trainees do all of the processing that has to be done at a certified kitchen. We rent a certified kitchen to do that. And then there's some parts of the process that can be brought back here to the workshop, such as labeling. And there's a lot of quality control. And we're also setting goals for how many of each product we're trying to produce.
And then talk a little bit about, real quick, the flowers that get distributed to hospice and seniors.
Just a hospice right now. Yeah. We do have Gray Bears as one of our Feed Two Birds share recipients. And so they take the food shares and distribute them to clients of Gray Bears. But for many years now, hospice has been one of our partners in the Feed Two Birds program. They take our flower bouquets and put them in a bucket near their door. And then as the social workers and nurses go out to see their patients, they can take a bouquet and give it to the patient. And the patients, I believe, for the most part, know that they are grown by trainees in our training program. And I think there's a real beauty to, seeing that come full circle.
Yeah. How big is the farm?
The farm is about 3.5 acres.
Okay. What's amazing to me is that 3.5 acres produces so much food for the lunches, food for the shares, food for people in the community in need of food, flowers for people in hospice, supplies for the shop for you to sell some of the products and help provide for the organization. It's beautiful to see how much life gets poured in to the garden and how much life it produces. Yeah, it's a really fascinating mystery to me, and I just love it so much.
And I think it really, that abundance that you're speaking about, that fertility and vitality, I think it really kind of takes us back to that question at the beginning of how much is enough, because we are really surrounded by this incredible abundance.
What do you see in the garden that you kind of catch yourself stepping back and witnessing that you wish you saw more in society?
Well, I always remark that, I drive my car to the farm and I get out of my car and I walk onto the farm. And I don't get to go to the farm every day. I work in the office many days. But every time, no matter how many times I've done this, every time I step on the farm, I am just so overcome with how much peace there is. and how impactful it is to me and my own sense of peace. And it's like it washes over me. I imagine other people have that experience too. And then also, I remember one of our past trainees, Barbara, who really said this beautiful thing about how every single part of the work that we do in the garden is a metaphor. And in the greenhouse, you're taking care of those little babies, and you know how much their life depends on your care. And I wish I could remember the rest of the quote, but our trainees often talk about how the farm is such an incredible metaphor for growth and taking care of each other.
Yeah, I mean, I was tomato pruning today, and I was just thinking of all the different metaphors of leaves can't touch the ground or it spreads diseases. And there needs to be, my whole time I'm lifting these branches up, lifting them off the dirt and making sure that there's good airflow below them and giving them, as one of the trainees said, giving them the opportunity to have life. And just, there's so many beautiful metaphors in the garden. And I think it's just the testament of how much life is in the garden and how much intentionality goes into the garden and how much community is in the garden. It's really beautiful to experience. And I think that all contributes to the peace that you're talking about. At the end of the day, what does gardening mean to you?
Well, as you were saying that just now, I was thinking about how, I'm not going to answer your question yet. I was thinking about how, when somebody is a true artist, they make something that's challenging or difficult look really effortless. And I was thinking about our crop production manager, Mike, who, has really pulled the farm through this year. He cares so deeply about the success of the farm and identifies so deeply with the farm succeeding. And I think that he moves with just incredible grace through the farm and, creates some of that illusion that it's easy to have a farm, And then for what does the garden mean to me? I think it's just an incredible place where so many elements of well-being come together, kind of like that mystery where the sum is greater. How do you say that? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Mm-hmm. And it means to me a place where people come and they bring their best. They bring out their best intentions, and there's like no assuming that something is wrong or that somebody is doing something to harm you. There's an assumption of goodness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then because of those expectations, and because the farm is such a beautiful place to be, so life-giving, as you say, we actually live up to that expectation. Mm. And then it's a wonderful reinforcing cycle.
One thing that stood out to me today, we were having a conversation with someone in the garden, and she was giving her story about how what's special to her about the garden is that there's always an opportunity for her to do something. And she was born with a lung problem, and some days she has good days, others she has bad days. And she said, when I have good days, this is what I do in the garden. And then when I have bad days and I'm having trouble breathing, I can sit over in this part of the garden and there's something for me to do. And she said, in the garden, there's a place for everyone. And I thought that was such a beautiful way of understanding that everyone belongs in the garden. And whether someone has a disability or going through something difficult, that there's a place. And the garden is just such a beautiful place to offer that type of forgiveness and an opportunity to all people. And I really got to see it today. It was a really, really cool moment for her to say that. How can people learn more about the Homeless Garden Project and get involved or give to your program?
Yeah, well, we have a website, homelessgardenproject.org, and we're also on Instagram and on Facebook. And we have a store downtown, in downtown Santa Cruz at 1338 Pacific Avenue. And there's information on our website about when it's open. For the most part, we're open 7 days a week, 11 to 6. And we are open more during the holidays. Today, you got to go to our knowledge share, and we're putting together a manual about how to do a similar program like ours. And I'm really excited to have that out and to share it with the community. on our website, there's a way to donate. The large majority of our funds do come from individual donations. We do not get a lot of government funding. Something like about 5% of our funds come from the government. That may change at some point, but that's how we are right now. And we really value the community belief in the work that we're doing and the community caring for the people we're serving. The support that we've gotten really tells a very different story than what you might hear in the media about, the public's perception of homelessness. There is incredible generosity and a desire for change.
Yeah, and really combats the bias that people on the streets are just lazy. They don't work hard enough. And then you come to the Homeless Garden Project and some of the hardest workers that you'll come across.
Right, and it might be somebody showing you how to, which plant is the weed and which plant is the one you want to save, or they might be showing you how to trellis tomatoes.
My final question is a question that I ask to everyone. Why local? Why do you feel like it's important to give and contribute locally?
It's a little hard to answer because it's so fundamentally obvious to me, but let me see if I can do that. I guess, the project is really about how interconnected we all are. The connections at the farm and here at the store or, when we have an event, they are so real and present, and the impact is also so real and present. And I think there's something very powerful about responding to that interconnection and to the tangibility and the neighborliness of giving locally. I don't know if there's something in there that makes sense to you. But.
Yeah, no, I love it. Thank you for spending time. It's always good to see you. And thank you for always being arms open wide and inviting us to share in the garden.
Thank you for coming and for sharing the story of our program and for the beautiful blankets that you make and just the great spirit that you bring too. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Love Your City podcast. If you want to find ways to get involved in your community, you can visit loveyourcity.org. If you have any questions or recommendations of grassroots leaders or nonprofits that we should be aware of, email us at media@loveyourcity.org.